that does is it usually has 0 to no lather whatsoever, and it just helps remove any foreign particle in your hair, such as product or too much oil buildup, but it leaves a lot of your natural oils behind, and it still gets your scalp really clean, your hair feels good, but it's much more gentle. It doesn't lather the same way, and it helps from getting all your hair to rub together when it's wet. If you're going to go into a co-wash, I love them. They're wonderful. Just check the brand and make sure that it's okay for all the times you wash. Sometimes you use that 90% of the time, and 10% of the time you use a traditional shampoo just to make sure that everything gets stripped off from the hair. Another one is a scrub, a scalp scrub. I use these, I'd say maybe once a month or when the weather changes here, because my scalp can like get a little dry or sometimes get a little too oily. And what they are, it's basically almost like a sugar scrub or a body scrub just for your scalp. And that's a really good way to get off any excess skin that's stuck in there. That's really good if you have really thick hair. It's another nice avenue just to make sure that your scalp feels really clean and nice, and that hair follicles can stimulate and grow through that. So those are other two options in tandem with the shampooing that you can try if you've never had before. They're definitely a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get the hang of them, they're really, really nice. We get into conditioning. Conditioning is pretty preference based, actually. I don't always use a conditioner. Sometimes I skip it altogether. So you could be one of those people too. That's totally fine. If you're not, then what you want to do is start from the ends and work your way up to the scalp. Conditioner, that's the one that you can really burn through. I have no sweet spot for the amount of conditioner you're using, because that is where your density comes in and your thickness and how long it is. So if you feel like you need a palm size, go for it, you may. And so once you're working it up, if you can, put it on the scalp and massage it in, because your skin is going to need that hydration. If you're someone who gets super oily or you don't like the feeling of it, go ahead and skip your scalp. It doesn't have to be on there. The only thing that's really important is when you go to rinse the conditioner, you're only going to rinse about 90 to 95% of it out. So you want slip, and you want to be able to kind of push your fingers through it, but you don't want weight. And if you are rinsing the conditioner 100% out and it feels right back to being clean, you're actually just wasting all the product, because the conditioner can't work. It's down the drain. So if you're one of those people who are like, oh no, I use conditioner, but I rinse it completely out from my hair, just skip it and go into a leave-in, because you're gonna end up saving yourself money. Going deeper into the product route, so shampoo and conditioner, and then as far as masks and treatments go, I love Olaplex, and I said it in one of my videos, is what you need to do with Olaplex is if you're doing the treatment, you don't want to do it too much. It's a fiber mender. It's not a cosmetic treatment, so it's not going to make your hair feel super soft and supple. It's building from the inside out. So Olaplex treatments you usually do weekly, bi-weekly, or once a month. I would talk to a stylist and consult with them if you feel the need to do it more than once a week. That's a big one. So with that, after the treatment, make sure you're shampooing and conditioning it. That's what the directions say. That's a big one. I'm always gonna harp on everyone, always follow the directions on your product. Even as a stylist, every time I think I know how a product works and I don't read the directions because I'm too good for it, I'm wrong and the product doesn't work, and then I'm upset. So always read the directions on whatever you're using. With the mask, same kind of concept. You're gonna let it sit in your hair, and again, you're only going to rinse it 90 to 95% out, so that way it can do its thing. With treatments and things like that, there's not one right or wrong answer. I always recommend everyone gets into a balanced one of a protein and a moisture, and the reason for that is if you push your hair with too much protein, it'll get brittle and it'll break, and if you push it with too much moisture, it'll get mushy and it'll just unravel. So an easy way to kind of figure out where you are at home, and this isn't 100%, but this is a good way to tell, is if your hair feels super, super straw-like when it's wet, it needs moisture. The protein bonds are a lot of times okay. It just really is craving some hydration. If your hair feels super, super mushy when it's wet, or kind of that cotton candy, and that happens a lot with the blondes, add some protein. You're gonna need some protein. It needs some structure to repair. Then with your leave-in, back down to reading the directions. Make sure your leave-in, if it's a heat protectant, you know what it's heat activated up to. A lot of times it's actually 375 and not 450. Even if they label it as 450 on the bottle, there's sometimes a little caveat to that. So check that, make sure. Also, you really have no business using an iron up to 450 if you're working on yourself. It's way too hot. 375 is usually the spot someone at home needs to do and work with, because you move a lot slower when you're working on yourself versus me in the salon. I can crank something up because I can move a lot faster. So think about that. Think about how you're heat styling. That's going to play a huge part on how your hair can grow, because if you're frying it in the mid shaft, it's already dead. That's another thing with hair. It's not a living thing on your body. It's really just an evolutionary tactic to keep our head warm. So if you're mean to it in the middle, a lot of times it'll start to fray there and it'll break. So when you're using a heat protectant or a leave-in, read the directions, follow up on them. Make sure that it's what your hair needs. So sometimes I may have 2 or 3 different type of heat protectants or leave-ins in my bathroom, just because at different times of the year, my hair is going to need different things. Something that plays a role into how your hair looks as it's growing out is your density and your thickness and your strand type. So even if you have fine hair, you may have a ton of it, and as your hair is growing out, you get a really solid, nice, clean weight line, and you don't really notice. Versus people who have thinner hair, like myself, when your hair starts growing out, sometimes what happens is because you just don't have a lot to start, it just kind of looks frazzled on the ends. So if you're in more of that category, I never recommend a volumizer. A volumizer is actually something that will give people with really thick or dense hair, because what a volumizer is engineered to do is kind of peak that cuticle open a little bit and cause some frizz to give you height and bounce up there. So normally people with finer, thinner hair don't need a lot of height. They can tease it. That's not really what they're looking for. They're looking for some bulk and some thickness on the ends. So if you're in that category, then you want to start using collagen or thickening based agents, not volumizers. There's a difference. You'll start seeing them come on the market a lot. Another over the counter is Mane and Tail. It's a collagen based shampoo and conditioner. It's not super friendly to your color, but it absolutely is meant to give your hair thickness. So that's a good one to use. Densifiers are going to start going into that. With that comes into your haircuts. So I get a lot of feedback and a lot of blowback from my clients about, well, if I cut my hair so often, then it won't grow. Not true. So what happens with a piece of hair? Like I said, it's not a living organism. So it doesn't really repair itself, which is why we use products for that and things like that. So once you cut it or anything happens and a split forms, it starts to travel up the strand. So if you don't catch that split before it gets to the mid shaft, then that piece of hair will continue to split. It'll get to the scalp and it actually can't grow anymore. It's going to have to shed, and then new hair can regrow in. That's why haircuts are important, is you want to keep maintaining those splits. If you're in the process of growing your hair out, instead of going every 6 to 8 weeks for a haircut, I would push that to every 12 weeks instead. It'll give you a little bit more length, and really at that moment, all you're trying to do is get rid of split ends. That's it. So if you're starting to go into the shaping category, that can be a little bit more tricky, because you're going to be taking more length off to get movement. So you kind of have to choose which one you're really caring about as you're growing it. You're going to hit a point where it just kind of hangs and it's ugly. It's this weird phase everyone gets to. It's normally right about here, especially because once you get here, your hair doesn't lay anywhere. It just wants to sit on your shoulders and do funky stuff. So this is a really hard length to get past because it looks so awful. I understand. I've shaved my head so many times. I've gotten to the stage so many times. I understand. Just keep working with it. Keep using your products to get it past that point, probably a solid inch past it. And then you'll notice that your hair is styling a lot better. Also with that are layers. I don't put layers in my hair. I only face frame. So it's a little bit different, and that's just so I can do these things up here, but everything in the back is all one length. And the reason I do that is back to my hair being on the thinner side and the finer side, that I need that weight. So when it does grow, if I wear my hair straight, it doesn't look just like a raggedy mess. So if you want some body and some movement in your hair and it's on the finer and thinner side and you want some layers, just tell your stylist to start the layers a little higher up. So you're not taking them short, not short layers. You just want layering in through the top or the crown area. And if your hair's on the fine side anyways, once it lays down, it's all gonna blend without giving you that really choppy look. That's another key one. You don't want the choppiness. You don't want a ton of textures or layers. Just want something so your hair moves when you're wearing it down. Now the piece of advice all my clients want to fight me on, which is do not live with a wet head. Don't do it. So what that means, no ponies when it's wet, no buns when it's wet, no braids when it's wet, no sleeping on when it's wet, no going out into the wind when it's wet. Your hair is really, really fragile when it's wet, and it's also very stretchy. So what happens is you put it into a bun or pony or a braid and it's super sleek, and those strands are all stretched out. As they start to dry, they start to contract again. And so wherever the fault point is or the weak point in the hair, it's gonna break. So I'll get a blow dry and I'll see they have like this halo around them. And if I pull the strand back, I can tell that's exactly where they tied their hair up at. If you're sleeping on a wet head, what happens is the friction from your pillow on your hair causes your strands to rub together. It'll dry them out, it'll create frizz, it'll create damage, and they'll break. If you go out into the wind, same concept as the pillow. So your hair is not meant to stay in a constant state of being wet. Don't treat it as such. You're gonna get much better results if you make sure that your hair is dry before you do any of those steps. With pillowcases, satin, sateen, or silk are always preferred. It'll minimize friction and it'll keep your strands nice and healthy. Or you can wear a cap. Silk, sateen, or satin are all preferred. I sleep in a cap, so it's just one of those things to prevent that dryness of cotton. And that's it. I know it's a lot of information. I'm sure there's stuff that I'm forgetting, but those are your pretty basic steps. I know it seems really tedious, but it is a lifestyle change whenever you're trying to get your hair to the next level. So patience, practice, perseverance, play around with your products, play around with your cuts, all that kind of stuff are all necessary. As always, if you have a stylist that you love or find one that you love, listen to them, let them guide you, not some rando on the internet. And if you like what you see and you don't hate me, go ahead and hit subscribe. And as always, you can leave a comment here or on TikTok, and then I will do my best to find it and I will do my best to answer it.